Reincarnated with the strongest system. Chapter 701 One Chance at Redemption. Sun Wukong smirked as he sipped the wine on his cup. He had already sensed Ephemera's Nogthai scheme, but he didn't do anything about it. The reason? He saw the little familiar fly straight towards the girl with long, purple hair, and light red eyes with an expression that screamed no, B**tch. Not on my watch. Little Will is well loved, Sun Wukong mused as he once again looked at the half-elf who was exchanging ice spells with Rebecca. For him, William's appearance at the heavenly domain was still fresh in his mind. He was also curious about what the red-headed teenager was doing back in his world, so when Zhu and Xia asked him to smuggle them to Hestia, the Monkey King thought that it was the perfect opportunity to go and give William a visit. Sun Wukong didn't expect that the moment they arrived, they would hear about William's exploits, which surprised the three who hailed from the celestial domain. This prompted them to travel to the Savadine Mountains where William would be appearing next. It was better to wait for him than to arrive than randomly scour the land in search of the person that they were looking for. Suddenly, a powerful explosion resounded in the arena which made both fighters skid a few meters away from each other. Rebecca glanced at her opponent and decided to use her trump card. "I'm going to get serious now," Rebecca announced. William's expression became dignified as he stood straight as a sword. Everyone that was watching the battle knew that the real battle was at hand, so all of their gazes focused on the two fighters. "Sacred Guardian, brightest light in the skies, I come to you in my times of need," Rebecca chanted as her body glowed in bluish hue. "Grant me your power, so I can vanquish my foes who stand before me. O eternal flame that covers the land in pristine white, grant me your illustrious grace." Meredith. The air trembled, and an overbearing presence descended upon the venue. Behind Rebecca, the image of an ice phoenix materialized. A powerful blizzard started to rage in the surroundings, and ice, and snow, turned the surroundings into a frozen wonderland. Everyone that was watching the battle could feel the power of a pseudo-demigod emanating from the ice phoenix that materialized behind Rebecca. They knew that the Savadine Mountains housed a powerful being, but very few were able to see its true form. At that exact moment, the beautiful lady's magical power exploded and increased at an alarming pace. Those who were proficient in magic frowned because they didn't expect that a teenager was able to release a power of this magnitude. "Saint rank," Lilith snorted. "What a joke! A pseudo-demigod and a saint teaming up against someone in a one-on-one battle? Ridiculous!" Some of the guests chuckled evilly in their hearts because they now understood what the Misty Sect was trying to show them. They're desperate to win, and gain fame by beating William, Princess Sidonie said softly as a frown appeared on her face. "Shameless!" Some of the guests that heard her nodded their heads in agreement, but the elders of the Misty Sect didn't care about what they thought. All of their gazes landed on the red-headed teenager to see his reaction on the powerful foes that had appeared in front of him. Earlier, William's face looked dignified, but now it was slightly pale. Those who had seen this change of expression on the half-elf's face, assumed that he must be panicking at the moment. They even thought that if they were in William's place, they wouldn't fare any better either. Everyone was half right. William was indeed fighting one of the greatest battles in his life, and he was on the losing end of it. "I shouldn't have eaten so much for breakfast," William thought as beads of sweat started to appear on his forehead. "If this goes on, I may not be able to last long." Meredith, the guardian of the Misty Sect, shrieked and flapped her wings, creating powerful gusts of winds that were hurtling in William's direction. The half-elf stood his ground as he did his best to withstand the attack that was headed in his direction. The gusts of wind was merely a greeting and not a formal attack. This was why William didn't defend himself and let the wind collide with his body. As everyone expected, no damage was done. However, if one were to look closely, William's expression turned even more pale after being on the receiving end of Meredith's greeting. "Optimus, help me," William pleaded. "I need to take a dump." "Excuse me?" William was doing his best not to make any unnecessary movements because he was afraid that the dam would burst if he wasn't careful. I need to take a dump, William repeated. Then find a place and get it over with. I can't, William answered through gritted teeth. If I move now, it will come out. Optimus quieted down as he calculated the possible solution to this problem. He didn't expect that William would suffer such an unexpected setback during a crucial time. Will, I finally found a solution. Really? What is it? Please hurry. I can't last any longer. Just do it while standing up. Dave Folk. Rebecca looked at her opponent's face and noticed that William's face was pale. A smile appeared on her face because she had already expected this scene from happening. She had been sheltered in the Misty Sect ever since she had left the southern continent. For her, a saint and a pseudo-demigod was on the top of the food chain, and anyone below that rank were merely ants. Surrender, Rebecca said. There's no shame in backing out of a battle that you can't win. Meredith eyed William in contempt. It had long wanted to see the half-elf who had conquered the 51st floor of the Tower of Babylon. It thought that William was someone powerful, but looking at the boy's constipated expression, it could tell that the half-elf had been overwhelmed by its presence. William ignored Rebecca's words because he was having a serious discussion with Optimus on how to deal with their current circumstance. The half-elf was not afraid of the saint-like pressure Rebecca was giving off nor of the presence of the pseudo-demigod in front of him. What he was afraid of was that he would be unable to hold back the force of nature that was threatening to burst forth from the depths of his being. Will, I have an idea. The only question is, are you brave enough to do it? Bring it on, bro. Optimus immediately shared what it had in mind because it knew that William was reaching his limit. According to his estimation, William had less than 3 minutes left before he released the Kraken. The beads on William's forehead increased as he listened to Optimus' daring plan. Since he had no other choice, he decided to bite the bullet and put his plan into action. You are not qualified to fight me, William said as he raised his chin in arrogance. Do you think a little saint like you is enough to beat me? I refuse to lower myself to your level. If I have to fight, I will fight that little bird behind you. It is barely qualified to fight against the awesome me. William's disdainful words made everyone look at him in a new light. It was not every day that someone would openly challenge a pseudo-demigod, and he'd even done it in an overbearing way. Darling is so awesome. Morgana, who had switched with Princess Sidonie, cheered. Chiffon smiled and nodded her head in agreement. Will can easily win this battle. This battle is nothing compared to what we experienced on the Devil's Floor. Just a saint and a pseudo-demigod. Ian snorted. We saw a lot of them during the southern invasion. Only those that haven't been baptized with war would falter in their presence. William's lovers fully supported their man and cheered for him. In their eyes, William could easily swat Meredith and Rebecca away with ease if he used his heroic avatar. They were not aware that he had been given a restriction in this match against Rebecca. James, on the other hand, looked at William with a frown. He wasn't roaring in laughter, or clapping his hands in glee. Although his grandson looked very valiant right now, and was similar to a hero that was about to slay the demon lord, James felt that something was definitely wrong. Why does Will look like he is about to take a dump? James thought as he looked at William's fearless expression. Am I just overthinking things? The temperature in the arena became colder as Meredith unleashed its divine powers. In its long lifetime, no one had dared to call it a little bird, and William's words that were filled with disdain and ridicule struck its nerve. You want to fight me? Meredith asked. You can refuse if you're scared, William snorted. In my eyes, you're just a weakling. Do you really think that you're that great? Come. Fight me if you dare. I'll only use a hand to slap you silly. Williams raised his right hand in a slapping gesture, while his left hand unconsciously pressed against his bum. He didn't have much time, and every word he spoke moved the payload ever closer towards the exit. He only had one chance at redemption. If he had to do it, he had to do it right. Chapter 702 Mwahahahaha. Time for you to suffer Part 1. Meredith narrowed its eyes as it looked at the half-elf who seemed to have a death wish. It was once a demigod, but due to certain circumstances, its rank had regressed, similar to what happened to Kasaganaga. As a beast that had reached the apex of the mortal realm, it could see no fear in William's eyes. No one could lie in front of a demigod, and although Meredith's rank had decreased, its senses were keen enough to pick up the half-elf's utter disregard for its presence. "What's wrong?" William asked. He looked at the 50-meter-tall ice phoenix with a sneer. "Are you afraid?" "Haha mmh." William forcefully closed his mouth to stop himself from laughing because he felt the danger in his colon start to move. Meredith was still on the fence about whether to fight against William or not. For some reason, its sixth sense was warning it that it would face great danger if it faced the red-headed teenager whose face was turning paler with each passing second. Just when Meredith was about to refuse, a mocking voice reverberated in the air. "My goodness! A pseudo-demigod is afraid to fight a one-on-one battle?" Elliot asked in disdain. "If that's the case, what was the point of you showing yourself right now? Are you perhaps here to fight William in a 2-versus-1 battle? Utterly preposterous. Are you really a crowned ice phoenix?" Conan chuckled when he heard his twin's mocking tone. "More like an ice chicken. Did you see us enter the arena to fight that girl, Rebecca, in a 3-versus-1 battle? If you don't have the guts then scram, weakling." Meredith frowned and fired 2 ice blade at the 2 annoying familiars that were outside the arena. More than anything else, it disliked being ridiculed by anyone. Just as the 2 ice blades were about to hit Elliot and Conan, a golden staff appeared in front of them and smashed the ice blades into pieces. "Do you feel proud of bullying the weak?" Sun Wukong asked. His voice was filled with contempt. "How about you pick on someone your own size?" Sun Wukong stood up from his seat and raised his hand. The golden staff that blocked Meredith's attack returned to his hand and a metallic sound echoed spread across the venue. Meredith didn't dare to answer Sun Wukong's challenge and pretended that it didn't hear it. In its current state, there was simply no chance of winning against Sun Wukong, who was a demigod that was at its peak. "Fine. I will fight you in a one-on-one battle," Meredith said as it looked at William. "I will not hold back. So I apologize in advance if I accidentally kill you." William smiled and switched his job class to Elemental Overlord. This was the second job class advancement of the Elemental Lord job class, and he had almost maxed it out during his training in the Atlantis dungeon. He flew over 1,000 meters in the air with a serious expression on his face. If one were to look closely, his legs were already shaking because he was nearing his limit. Meredith screeched and faced William. Rebecca remained on the ground and watched the battle with a complicated expression on her face. "Mortal, I will show you the stupidity of your actions," Meredith stated as its body glowed. "I will turn you into a crystal statue and add you to my collection." William summoned Solile and threw it down onto the arena, where it embedded itself. He then summoned Stormacala and pointed it in Meredith's direction. "Enough talk, let's fight," William said. Meredith flapped its wings and opened its beak. A blue orb of light appeared in front of its beak. It was planning to use a powerful breath attack to freeze the arrogant mortal in front of it. William, on the other hand, merely pointed his spear at his opponent. His lips moved ever so softly as if muttering something. Quick shot war art, fusion form. Suddenly, William disappeared and the blue breath attack of the phoenix exploded in a shower of sparks. A confused expression appeared on Meredith's face as it subconsciously swallowed something that had entered its mouth. The other guests might have not noticed what had transpired, but the experts among the guests saw everything clearly. The people around James looked at each other in shock, because they didn't expect William to do such a daring thing. "Don't tell me." The corner of James' lips twitched as he thought of a possibility. He had already noticed William's strangeness, but he wasn't sure if his hunch was right. After all, if he was right then his grandson's last resort was totally understandable. William stabbed Stormacaller at the Ice Phoenix's throat in order to stop his descent in his opponent's esophagus. The half-elf hung in place with a smile. Yes. Success. William thought as he summoned several icicles, and embedded them on the Ice Phoenix's throat, in order to create a firm foothold. After everything was done, William pulled down his pants and released the kraken. Meredith was feeling smug. Although there was a slight mishap in the order of things, it didn't change the fact that it had already eaten the pesky half-elf who dared to tarnish its reputation. It could sense the stares of everyone in the Misty Sect, and its eyes glowed in triumph. You can only blame your stupidity, Meredith thought. So what if you are the one that conquered the 51st floor of Babylon? In my eyes, you're nothing. The Ice Phoenix spread its wings wide and was about to utter a mighty screech to announce its victory. However, instead of a powerful cry of triumph, what escaped its mouth was "Purr." The spectators all blink in disbelief of what they heard. For some reason, they felt that the sound was oddly familiar. Meredith immediately clamped its mouth shut tight. It also didn't know why such a thing happened. After half a minute, it once again opened its mouth to announce its victory when it smelt something unusual. Its nose sniffed the air and contemplated on the nature of the scent that had suddenly assaulted its senses. Smells like sh*t, Meredith thought as it once again closed its mouth. A few seconds later, it could taste something else as well. Taste like sh*t. It was at that moment when the Ice Phoenix's eyes widened in surprise. Its face then suddenly turned red, then green after coming into a realization. I'll kill you! Meredith roared in anger. Its voice descended from the sky like a hammer and the entirety of the Misty Sect trembled due to its might. It couldn't believe that someone was unscrupulous enough to do something so shameless inside its body. William von Ainsworth. I'll kill you! Meredith's hate-filled cry resounded in the heavens. It had never hated a mortal as much as it hated William at this point in time. If curses could kill, the half-elf would have died 1,000 times already. Unfortunately, it couldn't, so the red-headed teenager continued to finish his business, which made the guardian of the Savadine Mountains almost crazy with anger. Chapter 703 Mwahahahaha. Time for you to suffer Part 2. The Ice Phoenix started to fly erratically in the air as if it was suffering from an epilepsy attack. The members of the Misty Sect could tell that something terrible was happening to their guardian, but they had no idea what it was. Thea and the elders looked anxiously at their guardian who seemed to be suffering from a stomachache. Their guests had the same thought as them. Although they weren't 100% certain, they believed that the one that was responsible for Meredith's current circumstance was none other than William. Maybe Will is harming the Ice Phoenix from inside, Ian said before glancing at the beautiful princess seated by her side. What do you think, princess? Morgana was currently the one in control of Princess Sidonie's body, and she nodded her head in agreement. That is the only thing that I can think of at the moment. I think Darling knew that he had no chance in fighting Meredith in a head-on collision, so he decided to infiltrate its body and destroy it from within. Chiffon looked at the Ice Phoenix that was struggling to fly in the sky with amusement. Will is really amazing. Even an Ice Phoenix is no match for him. Sun Wukong spat the wine he was drinking at Zhu who was seated in front of him. The chubby young man looked at Sun Wukong with a face filled with injustice, as he wiped the wine off his face, and expensive clothes. Senior brother, you should at least conform with the basic etiquette when you are in a social gathering, Zhu said in a helpless voice. Sorry, Sun Wukong waved his hand. I'll go wash up. I'll be back later. The powerful Monkey King hurriedly stood up and headed straight towards the washroom. As a being of its caliber, Sun Wukong was able to see through things using the power of his fiery golden eyes. His eyes could allow him to identify evil no matter what form it takes. Right now, William was doing a very evil thing and he regretted his decision because the scene he witnessed was the uncensored version. $% and Sun Wukong cursed when he reached his destination. There were things that you couldn't unsee once you saw them. This was one of those times when the Monkey King wished that he hadn't allowed his curiosity to get the best of him. Rebecca, who was in the arena, frowned. She had formed a contract with Meredith and they shared their senses to each other. Although the young genius couldn't fully grasp what was happening to the Ice Phoenix, she was feeling a terrible sense of dread that wouldn't go away no matter how hard she tried to calm herself. Meanwhile, inside Meredith's body. Whoa! William, who was still in the middle of his business, summoned more ice spears and embedded it on the Ice Phoenix's throat, in order to stabilize his position. Time out! William shouted. I'm still not done. I'll kill you. Meredith's powerful telepathic voice reached William's mind and the half-elf could feel its strong murderous intent. Just calm your tits. After I'm done, I'll fight you for 200 rounds. Die. Meredith's movements became more erratic and it could feel its face burn in shame and humiliation due to William's immoral actions. F***ck. This bird brain has lost it. William felt anxious because everything around him was shaking like crazy. A few minutes later, William finished his business, and immediately used cleansing spells to clean himself. The half-elf knew the importance of proper hygiene, so he didn't skimp in using the power of the elements to purify his body after conducting his business. Since you want to play rough, I'll show you how I play rough. William shouted in anger. He didn't even feel any guilt in using the Ice Phoenix's throat as his personal cubicle. He was even angered because Meredith was making things difficult for him as he took a dump. William summoned the chamber pot of serenity with an evil glint in his eyes. Optimus, remove my sense of smell. William ordered as he summoned the chamber pot of serenity. It's payback time. Done. William sniffed around to confirm that he couldn't smell anything. After confirming that his sense of smell had been disabled, he aimed the opening of the chamber pot downwards. Mwahahahaha. Time for you to suffer. William roared in laughter. Eat sht motherfer. The chamber pot glowed briefly before its seal was opened. Just like a dam that had been broken, a wave of night soil descended down like a torrential river, straight towards the Ice Phoenix's stomach. Meredith felt the changes that were happening in its body and its face grew pale. If in the past, it was just flying erratically, now it was like an earthworm that had been sprinkled with salt. Rebecca's face also grew pale as she finally realized what was happening inside the Guardian's body. Her body unconsciously shuddered as she forcefully severed the connection between her and the Ice Phoenix, who was wreaking havoc on the entirety of the Savadine Mountains. After an internal struggle, the Ice Phoenix flew towards the heavens in a fury. Its body glowed brightly as it ascended several thousands of meters in the sky. You disgusting half-breed! I will send you to the afterlife even if it's the last thing I do. Its rage-filled voice reverberated, allowing everyone around the Savadine Mountains to hear it. Something inside of Meredith had snapped, and it stopped caring anymore. There was only one thing on its mind, and that was to kill William by self-detonation. Warning! Strong magical energy overload detected. What's going on, Optimus? William asked. He could feel the strong magical fluctuations around him, and his senses were telling him that it wasn't anything good. According to my calculations, Meredith has decided to self-destruct in order to kill you. There are only 30 seconds left before this Ice Phoenix's body detonates. William hurriedly sealed the lid of the chamber pot of serenity and stored it away. He didn't expect that Meredith would be decisive enough to use this method in order to send him to the afterlife. F***ck. I guess I went too far. Maybe I should have asked it politely if I could take a dump inside its throat. Optimus was at a loss of words due to William's logic. Although it was the one that had proposed this idea, it was Will's decision to summon the chamber pot of serenity, and unleash a torrent of unworldly filth inside the body of the pitiful pseudo-demigod. The system even thought that if the same were to happen to it, it might have chosen the same outcome as Meredith, and opted to self-destruct in order to kill William. 5 seconds. A powerful explosion erupted in the atmosphere. A blinding light illuminated the heavens and it was seen for many miles around the Savadine Mountains. Thea, the sect master of the Misty Sect, heard a cracking sound come from the necklace that hung on her neck. The crystal on her necklace was something that was passed to all the sect masters of the Misty Sect. It was Meredith's life crystal, and the crack on its surface made her face turn grim. The blue crystal slowly turned black, which was the indication that Meredith had died. This made her body subconsciously tremble because she didn't expect that something like this would happen to their guardian. Meredith was a phoenix, so she wouldn't really die. She would respawn in the underground sanctuary of the Misty Sect, but her rank would fall to that of a centennial ranked beast. Also, it wouldn't be able to move for a few weeks in order to recuperate from its forced rebirth that had destroyed its main body. Suddenly a fluctuation was felt in the arena. In the place where the golden spear was embedded, a handsome half-elf appeared with a refreshed smile on his face. Congratulations! You have slain a myriad beast. You have acquired myriad grade beast core. Ding! Elemental Overlord job class has reached its max level. Would you like to advance to the next job class? William's smile widened when he read the information on his status page. His Elemental Overlord job class had reached its max level, and now it could be upgraded to its final form, Elemental Archon. Sweet! William wanted to laugh out loud, but he was currently being watched by many people, so he decided to play it cool and just smile evilly. His fight against Rebecca was still not over. Now was not the time to laugh like his grandfather when he wanted to brag to his friends. When Rebecca saw William's smile, she felt her entire body shudder. However, it didn't end there. When she saw the item in William's hand, she unconsciously took a step back. It was the item that had made Meredith suffer, and seeing it firsthand made Rebecca relieve the sensations that the Ice Phoenix had suffered. Well then, William said as he raised the chamber port, pointing in Rebecca's direction. It's your turn. Are you ready for this? Rebecca's stomach lurched as she stared at the damnable item in William's hand. In her eyes, it was the most ominous thing in the world, and no one, alive or dead, would want to be on the receiving end of that dastardly weapon, which would give someone a trauma that would last for the rest of their lives. Chapter 704 Brothers for Life. William took a step forward, and Rebecca took 3 steps back. Several images flashed through her mind and she hurriedly covered her mouth with both of her hands, in order to prevent herself from throwing up. Her expression became extremely pale, which was unbecoming of the label of a young genius born every few hundred years. Seeing his opponent's pretty face dyed with panic, William came to a realization. A devilish smile appeared on his lips as he lowered the chamber pot in his hands. Do you still want to fight? William asked. Rebecca firmly shook her head. She would rather concede than face a fate that was worse than death. So you concede? William inquired as the smile on his face widened. Rebecca nodded like a hen pecking rice. Her hands were still blocking her mouth, so she wasn't able to utter any words. Even so, her action was more than enough to tell everyone that she had lost the will to fight. Very well, William stored the chamber pot away and casually used water magic to wash the hands that he had used to hold it. Since I won this match, I get to give you one order. This is the deal that we had back then, right? After William had stored the chamber pot away, Rebecca was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief and removed the hands covering her lips. Although her expression was still a bit pale, it was starting to recover its color. The proud inner disciple of the Misty Sect reluctantly nodded her head. They indeed had that agreement, and Rebecca had already resigned herself to her fate. From now on our marriage agreement is officially null and void, William stated. You are free to do whatever you want to do with your life. Who you want to marry in the future is none of my business. I order you to live your life to the fullest, and live it without regrets. That is all. Our grudges end here. William didn't even bother to wait for Rebecca's reply and walked out of the arena. He headed towards the banquet in order to get some free grub. He had just emptied his stomach, and now he was feeling very hungry. Rebecca watched him go with a complicated expression on her face. A few seconds later, her gaze shifted to the angelic familiar who was looking back at her with a meaningful smile. She bit her lip because she remembered the agreement she had with Elliot, and it made her feel depressed. One of the shackles that bound her was removed, but another rose up to take its place. According to their agreement, she would become the familiar's subordinate for 2 years, since she had lost her battle with William. Elliot smirked before flying towards William. They would be staying in the Savadine Mountains for a few more days, so he had plenty of time to get acquainted with his new subordinate. As William walked towards his lovers, everyone was paying close attention to him. The old men looked at him with great interest. The teenage men looked at him in envy and jealousy, while the girls looked at him with a passionate gaze. William ignored them all and continued walking. However, before he reached Princess Sidonie's table, he felt some familiar presence not far from where he stood. Shifting his gaze to the VIP seats of the Misty Sect, he saw a brown-haired young man that was looking at him with a smirk. There was a little girl seated beside him, but the latter was busy eating the peach in her hand. The half-elf frowned because although this was the first time he had seen the young man, he was sure that he knew him. A few seconds later, his gaze landed on the chubby young man, and the scholarly man that was looking back at him with a smile. "Long time no see, oink," the chubby young man said. William's eyes widened in shock before a happy expression appeared on his face. He only knew of one person that added oink to their speech, and it was none other than the demonic pig who had fought by his side within the heavenly domain. Shoo! William happily walked towards his old companion's direction and gave the chubby young man a hug. "What are you doing here? I thought the Jade Emperor MMH. Cher hurriedly covered William's mouth with his hand and whispered something in the half-elf's ears. It was not advisable to discuss anything related to the gods of the temple in public. After hearing Shah's statement, William nodded his head to inform the scholar that he understood. The half-elf laughed and also gave Shah a hug. He was very happy to see them. William thought that his two friends decided to pay him a visit before passing through the cycle of reincarnation. What he didn't know was that the two demons were smuggled to the world of Hestia by Sun Wukong because of their request. "Your Excellency, it is a great surprise to see you here," William bowed respectfully to Sun Wukong. Every time he used his heroic avatar, he could feel the Monkey King's enormous strength, which had helped him greatly in the war of the southern continent. "I just came here to sightsee," Sun Wukong replied as he patted William's shoulder. "It's good to see that you are doing well." The half-elf, Sun Wukong, Zhu, and Sha chatted happily to the surprise of the members of the Misty Sect. The other representatives of the different factions who had seen Sun Wukong's might a few days ago were also shocked. William's lively chat with the three mysterious personages was enough to tell them that the red-headed teenager and the demigod knew each other, and seemed to be very close. "You guys, are you sure about this?" William asked. After hearing Zhu's purpose for coming to his home world, the half-elf felt very touched. He couldn't believe that they threw their golden ticket to reincarnate in a higher world, just to repay the kindness that he had given them. "Brothers for life, oink," Zhu said with a smile. "I won't feel comfortable until my debt to you is settled. For the time being, I'll stick with you until I repay you in full." "That goes the same for me as well," Sha commented from the side. "We owe you our freedom, Will. It is only normal that we reciprocate your kindness." Sun Wukong nodded his head. He couldn't stay long in Hestia, so he couldn't join the three in their adventures. The most he could do was watch their escapades from the celestial realm, while drinking wine. Princess Sidonie, Ian, and Chiffon had joined them after being invited over by William. Zhu told the three ladies about William's battle against the celestial army in the heavenly domain. Sun Wukong had already used his powers to prevent others from spying on their discussion, so Zhu was able to talk without holding back any information. Princess Sidonie and Chiffon were the maidens of the 7 deadly sins, which allowed them to converse with their patron gods. William had already met Eros and Adephagia, so he deemed that it was not a problem for them to know what had transpired in the celestial realm. The same could be said for Ian, who had already met Issei. The beautiful mermaid was made aware of the training William was doing while he was in a coma. When the girls found out about Sun Wukong's identity, all of them bowed to him in respect. They bowed to him, not because he was a demigod, but because of the help he had given William during his time of need. While William and his group were talking merrily, the elders of the Misty Sect were feeling depressed. Now that their guardian had regressed once again, they felt wary of the stares that were given to them by the factions of the central continent. Without the protection of their guardian, their sect was like a lamb that was surrounded by wolves on all sides. Unless they received some strong help on their side, their thousand-year dominion was in danger of being trampled on by the other powerful factions that held grudges against them. Those that had long disliked the Misty Sect due to their arrogance were laughing in their hearts. They were like the vultures and hyenas that were waiting for the lion to finish killing their prey. Once the animal had bled enough, they would charge forth in order to take a bite of the animal that didn't have the power to resist their advances. Chapter 705 Cry a River of Blood and Tears. After the banquet, Thea, alongside the elders of the Misty Sect, conducted a high-level meeting. None of them had expected their guardian to choose to self-destruct during its battle with William, and it caught them completely by surprise. Because of this, all of them were facing a great headache. Without a powerful deterrence, the Misty Sect was just like an average sect that could be stepped on by forces that were much more powerful than them. The reason they were afraid was because they had also done this in the past. Meredith was once a demigod, so very few people wanted to mess with them. This allowed the Misty Sect to develop for 1,000 years, which allowed them to become one of the powerful forces in the central continent. They had stepped upon countless small forces during their rise, and they'd purposefully stepped on each of them due to their strong backing. Without Meredith to hold the fort, the prestige that they had built was just like a castle made of sand. A castle that would easily be destroyed once a powerful wave washed over the shore. What should we do? Lady Miriam asked anxiously. The elders looked at her, but none of them could give her the answer. All of them were feeling anxious as well, and they hoped that there was someone that could find a way to solve the difficulty that they were facing. Thea had already asked Rebecca if she knew why Meredith had decided to self-destruct during its battle with William. The young genius only said that William had touched Meredith's reverse scale, which prompted it to self-detonate in an attempt to kill William while he was inside its body. Unfortunately, William survived, and Meredith's rank had dropped to the centennial rank. Thea scanned the depressed faces of everyone in the room. She had already thought of what to do, but she was afraid that none of the elders would support her decision. Seeing that all of them were clutching at straws, she decided to speak up and tell them about her plan. "I have a proposal," Thea said with eyes filled with determination. "We need to ally ourselves with a powerful faction in order to preserve our heritage." The elders' expression turned grim, but they also understood that this was the only course that they could take. The only question was, which faction would they join? They were surrounded on all sides, and their borders contended with two empires, a kingdom and the Glory Sect. All of them were incredibly strong, and had been eyeing the resources of the Savadine Mountains for hundreds of years. They were the forces that the Misty Sect was very wary about. Any among these four factions could become their new master, after the celebrations in their sect ended. For now, no forces would attack them because they were currently their guests. However, after a month or two, these people would definitely send their representatives to negotiate with Thea, and kick them while they were down. "Which faction should we join?" Eleanor asked. "Will it be the Glory Sect to the west? The Kingdom of Reno to the north? Or perhaps the Alun and Air Empire that lies to our east and south?" Eleanor gritted her teeth in frustration. She didn't think that she would see the downfall of her sect during her lifetime. "None of them," Thea answered. "We will ask for external support." "Who are you going to ask?" one of the elders asked. "Looking for external support is difficult. Their power must be strong enough to deter our neighbors. Also, if their base is far away from us, having them as our allies will be useless." The other elders nodded in agreement. They didn't mind getting a strong ally, but they also had to consider that seeking help from factions that were too far away from them would be useless. Thea understood what they were thinking, but she didn't care. As the sect master, the preservation of their sect was her topmost priority. She was prepared to bleed and be extorted by the other party. As long as their territory wasn't conquered before their guardian had regained its full strength, there was still a way to make their comeback. "I'm talking about the Ainsworth family," Thea said in a firm manner. "We will ally with them in order to prevent our sect from being conquered by others." "The Ainsworths? What can they do?" "This is not a good idea, Sect Master. While William had shown his prowess, he is but a single person. He couldn't possibly protect us from these powerful factions on our behalf, right?" The elders looked at Thea in disappointment. They didn't expect that their sect master would choose to ally themselves with the same person that had caused this problem in the first place. "Think about it. William is the owner of the 51st floor of the Tower of Babylon," Thea said. "No one wants to be on his bad side because he can blacklist anyone from entering the 51st floor. Also, he is the owner of a few other floors in the tower. Simply put, no one can advance through the floors that belong to him without his approval." After pondering about this logic, most of the elders realized that this was indeed an effective deterrent to a faction that wanted to expand. Right now, the era of great wars had ended. No one could expand their territory unless they went to war with their neighbors. With several chips in his hand, William could freely designate ownership of the various floors under his command. To the powerful factions of the continent, this was a temptation that none of them could resist. The next day, "You want me to make an announcement that the Misty Sect and I are allies?" William asked. "Sure, I don't mind. That is the answer you want to hear, right?" His tone was laced with sarcasm, but no one dared to offend him at this point in time. They were holding on to him as a lifeline. If William didn't agree, the name Misty Sect might cease to exist a year or two from now. "Yes," Thea answered. "We are willing to heavily compensate you for accepting our alliance." "So in short, you want me to become your meat shield," William said as he rubbed his chin. "Do you think I'm a goon that you can hire by giving protection money? I'm not that cheap." "Lord William, anything can be discussed." "Yes. We are willing to accommodate any request you have. Your Excellency, you are our only hope." William had a carefree look on his face. For him, the Misty Sect was a band of scoundrels who only relied on their backing to bully others. Now that they had lost their guardian, they were like wild ducks that would fly away once they heard a gunshot. "Oh, the irony!" William chuckled. "A few years ago, I was being ridiculed by your sect. Now, you are practically begging me to save you guys. Oh, how the mighty have fallen." William then shifted his attention to Eleanor and Lady Miriam, who had their heads bowed in shame. "I bet both of you didn't see this day coming, right?" William sneered. Although he was the root cause of the Misty Sect's possible downfall, he didn't give a hoot about their low-quality acting. "I failed to see your greatness because of your upbringing," Eleanor replied. "It was a terrible mistake on my part. I am willing to do anything so I can have your forgiveness." Rebecca's master had no choice but to eat her pride and lower her standing in front of William. If this was the only way on how their sect could be saved, she was willing to sacrifice herself for the greater good. She was an orphan that was picked up by the previous sect master and raised with love and care. For her, the Misty Sect was not only a sect, but her home. Eleanor would do anything in her power to prevent its downfall. Elliot and Conan stood on William's shoulders with their arms crossed over their chest. They had no intention of intervening in the discussion. Even so, a mischievous glint flashed on Elliot's eye. Unlike the straightforward and innocent Conan, Elliot was just as much of a scammer as William and James. Even if he didn't say anything to William, the angelic familiar knew that the half-elf was already formulating a plan on how to make the Misty Sect cough up their resources until they cried a river of blood and tears. Chapter 706 I'm more suited to be the devil than him. Seeing that the Misty Sect was dead set on using him as a meat shield, William decided to call for some backup. When it comes to scamming people, James was the true professional. With him calling the shots, the red-headed teenager was sure that Thea and the elders of the sect would have to think thrice if they thought that they could take advantage of the Ainsworth family. Isn't this problem easy to solve? James said with a smile that would make all the toothpaste models quit the commercial industry. Lord Ainsworth, please tell us the solution to our problem, Thea said with a hopeful expression. She could tell that William wasn't interested in their proposal, so they decided to do whatever they could to satisfy his grandfathers so the alliance could be formed. Since both of them were Ainsworths, it didn't matter who they talked to. In fact, James was better because William would obey him. As long as they could convince the old man to agree to the alliance, all their problems would disappear. The answer is really simple, James replied with confidence. All you need to do is make me the sect master. If the sect belongs to me, then I will be able to get all of its treasure, I will be able to prevent any losses from happening. The old coot smiled and patted his chest as if he was someone with good moral character. Thea and the elders of the Misty Sect looked at him in disbelief. For a brief moment they thought that James was joking. However, seeing his leave it to me expression, they realized that he was serious about taking the entire sect as his own. William, who was standing at the side, looked at his grandpa and realized that compared to James, he was just a small-time scammer. His original plan was to split the resources of the Misty Sect by 50-50. He never thought that James would shamelessly want to take everything. Lord Ainsworth, isn't this inappropriate? Thea asked. At most, we can agree to a 70-30 split. You will have 30%, and we will get 70%. Okay, bye. James didn't even allow Thea to finish her sentence, and walked away taking William with him. As he was about to open the door of the room, he glanced back at Thea with a smile. Good luck to all of you. I'm sure that in 3 months' time, there will be no more Misty Sect in the Central Continent. At least, if I become the sect master, your sect would still be standing. After saying those parting words, James and William left the room, leaving Thea and the elders of the sect with dumbfounded expressions on their faces. Gramps, do you think they will agree to your request? William asked as he walked beside James down the hallway. I don't really care if they agree or not, James replied. I won't lose sleep over something like this. The only ones that won't be able to sleep tonight are those fools who thought that they could take advantage of our family's name. William nodded his head in understanding. Although the Misty Sect was a powerhouse in the Central Continent, it was nothing compared to their family's property inside the Tower of Babylon. Just as James predicted, none of the top brass of the sect was able to sleep that night. The founding celebration would last for 3 days, but they no longer felt any reason to celebrate. Even so, they couldn't possibly cancel the event because this would further their ridicule as the other factions laughed at their current circumstance. The next day, the representatives of the Air Empire, Elune Empire, Kingdom of Reno, and Glory Sect, met with Thea privately. All of them promised great benefits to the Misty Sect for as long as they became their subsidiary force. These 4 powerhouses had also had a high-level meeting a day ago and decided to split the territory of the Misty Sect among themselves. As for the sect itself, they would become their armed forces whom they could order to do the dirty things for them. Thea had to use all of her willpower to keep the calm expression on her face, as she listened to the representatives of the 4 powers, who boldly told her that they wouldn't take no for an answer. Either the Misty Sect submitted to them, or they would use military force to make Thea and the elders of her sect submit to their rule. The representatives left with smug expressions on their face because for them, the Misty Sect was already in the bag. No external forces would dare to participate in this conflict, and suffer the wrath of their combined forces. Let's make a vote, Thea said as she scanned the faces of the depressed elders around her. They only gave us until tomorrow to decide. After that, there will be no turning back. Faced with the threat of being conquered on all sides, Thea clenched her fists as she counted the votes of the core members of the sect. She knew that when morning came, things would never be the same again. The disciples of the Misty Sect were unaware of the threat that hung above their heads. Only the inner disciples like Rebecca were told about the sect's current plight. "I shouldn't have agreed to your proposal," Rebecca said through gritted teeth as she stared daggers at the angelic familiar who was looking back at her with an angelic smile. "If I hadn't accepted the heart crystal, I would not have been able to form a contact with Excellency Meredith. Even if I lost the match, the sect would still be safe from being invaded on all fronts." Elliot chuckled as he landed on top of the table. "Well, what's the point of saying these things now?" Elliot asked in a teasing tone. "All of us must face the consequences of our actions. Even if you regret your decision, know that I didn't force you to do anything. You were the one that made the choice. I only gave you an option." Rebecca lowered her head as she tried to control her raging emotions. Elliot was right. Now that everything was over, even if she regretted her decision, there was nothing she could do but accept the outcome. "What will happen to our sect?" Rebecca asked. Elliot shrugged. Just like William, he didn't care about the Misty Sect. The only reason he visited Rebecca was to finalize their agreement. "These things are outside your control," Elliot replied as he flapped his wings. He then flew towards Rebecca and hovered a few inches away from her face. "Let your sect master and elders handle this problem. You're just a disciple, there's nothing you can do to influence the outcome." Rebecca raised her head and looked at the familiar who looked exactly like William. If she reached out her hand to grab him, she could easily crush him in her grip. However, she couldn't do that because she was now the familiar's subordinate for 2 years. Even if she planned to cause Elliot harm, the power of the contract would prevent her from doing so. "Just close your eyes and accept your fate," Elliot said as he moved closer. He then caressed the side of Rebecca's face and marveled at its smoothness. "Don't worry. I am not a bad employer, I will make sure to give you benefits as well." Rebecca sighed and accepted her fate. She closed her eyes and waited for Elliot to brand her with the symbol of ownership. "You will not regret your choice," Elliot's silky voice reached her ears. "From now on, you belong to me." Rebecca felt something soft press over her lips. A few seconds later, she felt a surge of electricity travel all over her body. Elliot backed away as he looked at the symbol that appeared on Rebecca's chest. A golden lightning bolt, with 2 wings spread out on both of its sides, glowed brightly. This was the proof of ownership that only became possible due to the power of the contract that was supervised by the god of contract, Sankas. "I'll see you tomorrow," Elliot said as he flew towards the window. "Don't worry about your sect. If your sect master and your elders are not stupid, they will definitely choose the lesser evil." Elliot chuckled internally as he flew towards William's residence. Now that the matter with Rebecca was settled, it was now time to conquer another maiden. However, the lady he had in mind was a cut above the rest. It was none other than William's 6th master, Chloe. "Sometimes, I really wonder if Conan and I ended up with switched roles," Elliot muttered softly. "I'm more suited to be the devil than he is." Chapter 707 You Dare to Steal What Belongs to Me? "Everyone, thank you for being part of the celebration of our Misty Sect," Thea said while standing on a platform. Today was the last day of the feast that they had prepared for their founding day celebrations, and then, after this, their guests would leave the next day to return to their respective territories. The 4 representatives of the factions that bordered the domain of the Misty Sect had smiles on their faces. They had already sent a report of the battle and its conclusion to their respective leaders. It was only a matter of time before the once prosperous sect of the Savadine Mountains fell into their hands. "It has been a pleasure hosting all of you here, and I pray that there will be more occasions where we can all gather and enjoy each other's company," Thea stated. She had already prepared herself to make the announcement, but deep inside, she was feeling very bitter. However, she also knew that this was the only way she could preserve the legacy that their sect had built for over 1,000 years. Today, I will step down from my position as sect master, Thea announced. A new era is at hand, so it is only fair that the management of the sect change hands. Several of the guests were surprised by Thea's announcement, but their surprise didn't last long. They understood that the Misty sect was on its last legs, so they thought that Thea was planning to run away and leave her subordinates to fend for themselves. Well said, Sect Master, the representative of the Glory sect clapped his hands in approval. A new era is indeed at hand. I sincerely hope that you enjoy your early retirement. Retirement is good. The representative of the Reno Kingdom nodded his head in agreement. Although you're still young, retiring early is not a bad thing. At least, you won't have to suffer again. The representatives of the two empires didn't say anything and simply smiled. Whether Thea retired or not was not important. They knew that the end would still be the same, and there was nothing Thea could do to stop it. Thea glanced at her rivals, as she used her willpower to finish the rest of her announcement. Without further delay, let me introduce our new sect master to everyone, Thea declared as she made a gesture. All hail His Excellency, James von Ainsworth. All hail. A handsome old man walked towards Thea with confidence. A confident smile hung on his face, as he faced the various powers of the world. All the elders, as well as the inner disciples of the sect, bowed their heads respectfully. They had been briefed a few hours ago about their sect master's decision to step down from her position. Even though the regular disciples didn't know why it happened, they decided to trust their elders, and pay tribute to their new sect master. Good day, everyone. James greeted the people who were looking back at him in disbelief. From this day onwards, I will be the new sect master of the Misty sect, and Lady Thea will be the vice sect master. James chuckled internally because he had already anticipated this outcome. Even Lawrence, as well as his old friends from the Hellan Kingdom, looked at him with dumbfounded expressions. Even Wendy's grandfather, Jevon, thought that this was just a prank. However, Thea and the elders all had serious expressions on their faces, which meant that the old scammer had indeed become the new sect master of one of the most powerful sects in the central continent. I am not someone who likes to give long speeches, so I'll just keep it short, James said. The Misty sect now belongs to me, so hands off. If any of you think that you can steal what is mine, then feel free to do it. I am looking forward to playing with all of you. Two men walked towards James and stood by his side. One was Vlad, the other was Sun Wukong. Some already knew who Sun Wukong was, but they didn't know who Vlad was. All of them were very curious about the identity of this man who followed James around. Vlad and Sun Wukong glanced at each other before nodding their heads at the same time. Immediately, the powerful aura of two demigods burst forth from their bodies. The expressions of everyone present changed drastically, especially those belonging to the Misty sect's four neighbors. They thought that the Savadine Mountains were already in the bag, but this development made them feel that they may have unknowingly kicked the hornet's nest. When Vlad and Sun Wukong stopped releasing their auras, James cleared his throat and continued his speech. I am William's grandfather, James stated. I have met several of your envoys in the Tower of Babylon. My grandson has given me full authority over his property in Babylon. This also means that the task of looking for potential partners for collaborations is in my hands. Any faction who dares to annoy me will be blacklisted from the Tower of Babylon. Their accomplices will also not be allowed to advance on the upper floors, especially the floors that fall under our family's jurisdiction. James paused as he allowed his words to be digested by everyone around him. A minute later, he continued his speech and dropped another bomb. I forgot to add that I am also the former commander of the Red Plague, James said in a teasing tone. I will be more than happy to visit the people who touch what is mine. That is all. I bid you all a good day and please, enjoy the feast that my sect has prepared for each and every one of you. James walked away from the platform with a smug expression on his face. He felt very good because it had been a while since he had pulled off a heist as big as this. Just as he expected, Thea had come to meet with him late last night in order to talk about the future of the Misty Sect. James wasn't someone who shied away from an opportunity to earn big. Since the entire sect had now been given to him, he could only happily accept the gift with both hands. Now that he was the sect master, it was only natural to protect his family's property. After James walked down the platform, he didn't leave the venue. He closed in on the 4 representatives of his new neighbors, with a smile that made the bodies of the 4 men shudder. Thea told me that you 4 bastards planned to take what is mine yesterday. James chuckled as he patted the shoulder of the representative that belonged to the Glory Sect. You've got guts. You dare to steal what belongs to me. I didn't know that the Misty Sect belonged to you, Lord James, the elder of the Glory Sect stuttered. If I knew, I wouldn't have done what I did. James grinned as he nodded his head in agreement. Of course, I understand. This is why we need to talk about how you are going to compensate me for emotional distress. The old scammer also glanced at the 3 other representatives that belonged to the Reno Kingdom, Ilun Empire, and the Air Empire. Only a fool would pass up this great opportunity to add more gold coins to their family's treasury. You guys are in cahoots with each other, so you're not off the hook, James said in a teasing tone. Don't worry, I won't ask for much, but the compensation must satisfy me. If not, I will take my 2 demigod friends, as well as the Red Plague to visit your territories and have afternoon tea with your bosses. Thea and the elders of the Misty Sect, who overheard the discussion, felt very happy. Seeing the people who had once threatened them with an ultimatum, being threatened in return by James made them gloat in their hearts. It was also at this moment when they realized that they had made the right decision in handing the Misty Sect over to James' hand. Not only was the old coot decisive enough to take the entire sect as his own, he even found an excuse to extort other people. William, who was subtly paying attention to Thea's and the elders' expressions, laughed in his heart. He knew that this was James' plan to make the top brass of the Misty Sect feel indebted to, and give their respect to, him. With this, the reluctance in their hearts will decrease by a good margin, William thought as he watched his grandpa in action. All that is left to do is tie up some loose ends, then go to Hestia Academy to have the next tier of the Familiomancer class unlocked. After that, I will wait for my father's acquaintance to find me. Once the true power of the Dungeon Conqueror has been unlocked, I can go to the Silver Moon continent to visit my mother. William sighed in his heart. He thought that it would still take him a few years before he could be reunited with his mother in the Silver Moon continent. Now that he had the power to protect himself, he didn't have to worry about the elven clans who had made him their mortal enemy. Once the full power of the Dungeon Conqueror was unlocked, it was only a matter of time before he would be in command of countless armies, just like his father, Maxwell, had been when he was still at the peak of his powers. Chapter 708 The Twilight of the World is at hand. Sixth Master, aren't you going back to Hestia Academy? William asked the fairy-like familiar who was sitting on his right shoulder with Elliot. Celeste told me that I should accompany you when you go to Hestia Academy, Chloe replied as she licked a chocolate lollipop. Why? Are you not happy that I'm here? Of course I am happy. Then, why do you have that constipated look on your face? It's not good to hold it in, you know. The smile on William's face stiffened as he walked towards the flying carriage that would take him back to the Creator Empire. In truth, he was very afraid of Chloe because she had the tendency to go ballistic and smash things around her. If not for Elliot being there to distract her, William would have definitely had a hard time keeping his cool with a little, ticking, time bomb on his shoulder. James and Vlad would be staying in the Misty Sect for a week before returning to the Tower of Babylon. His grandpa had already informed him that his uncle, Morgan, was the one in charge of the floor of Asgard while James was away. William didn't have any recollection of this elusive uncle of his. After he was delivered in Lont, he had never had the chance to meet his uncle since he'd opened his eyes in the world of Hestia. They say that Uncle Morgan is my father's twin and they looked exactly like each other, William thought. Since I saw my father when I inherited his profession, I will also be able to recognize Uncle Morgan when I see him. William then glanced at Zhu and Sha that was walking by his sides. Their purpose for coming to Hestia was to repay his kindness, so they intended to stick with him for the time being. The half-elf had no complaints with this arrangement. In fact, William was very happy because, for him, Zhu and Sha were like his sworn brothers whom he could count on with his life. Sun Wukong, on the other hand, bid him goodbye because he had to return to the celestial world. The Monkey King had already broken several rules when he forcefully broke through Hestia and smuggled Zhu and Sha through with him. In order to not bring more trouble to himself, he decided to return and lie low for a while, so that the Jade Emperor, and the stuck-up law enforcers, wouldn't make things too difficult for him. Princess Sidonie, Ian, Chiffon, Kenneth, and Pearl were all standing in front of the flying carriage and waiting for him to arrive. Charmaine's sister looked at William with a serious expression on her face. After she lost consciousness during their battle, she had been in bed for 3 days and was bereft of strength. Pearl felt that her lethargic state was caused by William. The only evidence she had that the half-elf had done something to her when she was out of commission were the 2 puncture marks on her neck. "Are you guys ready to go?" William asked. Everyone nodded. They had already prepared everything for their departure, and all that they were waiting for was Emperor Leonidas' signal to return to the Creator Empire. As William was about to board the flying carriage, he felt something move inside his consciousness. His expression immediately became serious, as he looked at his lovers with a complicated expression on his face. "Hold this to me for safekeeping," William said as he passed Soleil to Ian. "There is something urgent that I need to attend to. I will all see you in the Creator Empire." William didn't even wait for Princess Sidonie's reply before he flew towards the sky. Zhu and Sha flew behind him, while riding a cloud made up of sand. They had noticed the look of concern on William's face, so they decided to follow him and see what was troubling him. The half-elf didn't ask them to leave him alone, because he didn't plan on keeping any secrets from the 2 of them. When they arrived at a location without any people, William took his 2 friends inside the Thousand Beast domain, and headed straight towards the Undying lands. The sounds of chains breaking echoed within the hidden sanctuary of Avalon. Malachi could feel his strength growing by the minute, as he waited for the shackles that bound him to shatter. He had been trapped inside Avalon for thousands of years, and the seal had finally lost its power. Finally! "I am free!" Malachi rejoiced after his last shackle was destroyed. Powerful magical fluctuations surrounded Malachi, and his body started to shrink. In his Dracolich form, he was over 20 meters tall, but now, his height was only a little over 2 meters. Nukkalavi, as well as the other 5 generals of the undead army, stood in anticipation. They had stayed inside Avalon for thousands of years in order to wait for this day to arrive. This was the scene that William saw when he arrived in the Undying lands. Millions of undead were kneeling as they showed their obedience to the being that floated over Avalon. "You're here, William," Malachi said. "I was about to ask you to come, but it is good that you came here voluntarily. There is something that I need to tell you." William looked at the Dracolich who had mostly regained his powers. Although he was still not at his peak condition, the power that William felt was no joke. This was a power that transcended a demigod and, for a brief moment, the half-elf thought that he was looking at a god. "What can I do for you, Your Excellency?" William asked. Malachi and him had already come into an agreement. Even though the Dracolich seemed scary and formidable, he had a feeling that Malachi would abide by the oath he had made to William, several years ago. "I will take the Undying lands with me," Malachi replied. His words were firm and would not take no for an answer. "I will be leaving your domain today." William nodded in understanding. However, he was still curious about one thing, so he decided to ask the question that had been in his mind ever since he had met Malachi. "Your Excellency, can I ask you a question?" "Okay. But, I'll only answer one question." Zhu and Sha listened at the side and didn't dare to interject in the conversation. They had already seen many powerful beings, including gods, but meeting Mwahahahaha made them feel weak. They had no doubt in their minds that if the Dracolich decided to end their lives, all that Mwahahahaha needed to do was stare at them. Avalon is the last bastion of humanity, and you have been trapped inside it for thousands of years, William said. Your Excellency, are you on the side of humanity, or against it? Mwahahahaha chuckled because this question was indeed laughable. Almost everyone that knew him had long ceased to exist. Some of them had died on the battlefield, while others died of old age. Even so, he still remained because he still had some unfinished business to attend to. My allegiance belongs to Hestia, Mwahahahaha said. As long as she needs me, I will remain for her sake. William frowned because Mwahahaha's answer was vague. He didn't state if he was on the side of humans or not. The Dracolica's answer hinted that his allegiance belonged to the world in its entirety. He was not bound by any race, law, and other restrictions built by those who lived in the world. It's fortunate that the two of us are not enemies, William sighed in his heart. Even if I held the power of the Dungeon Conqueror, I don't have the confidence to emerge victorious against him. On that same day, an island that was thousands of meters long, appeared in the sky near the Savadine Mountains. Those who saw it felt their bodies shiver because of the unholy presence that it radiated. However, this feeling didn't last long because just as fast as the island appeared, it disappeared just as quickly. No one knew if what they saw was only an illusion or not. However, one thing was certain. All the guests that still hadn't departed from the Misty Sect saw it. They felt the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end when they saw the island. Among the guests, only one was able to recognize it and a grim expression appeared on his face. So, the time has finally come, Vlad muttered. Mwahahahaha is finally free and, with his appearance, this world will face an unprecedented calamity. Vlad felt his blood turn cold because he knew that no one would be safe from what was about to transpire. I need to visit a few of my acquaintances, Vlad thought. They have to know that the twilight of this world is at hand. Chapter 709 Not all treasures are silver and gold. William watched the undying lands until it vanished from his sight. Mwahahahaha had activated its stealth ability, and no one knew where the giant floating island would appear next. Although William didn't know what Mwahahaha's goal was, one thing was certain, the Dracolich was not his enemy. Mwahahahaha had made this perfectly clear to him, and the half-elf could tell his sincerity. Before Mwahahahaha left, he said some parting words to William. He told the half-elf that if they ever meet in the future, William should pretend that they didn't know each other. The red-headed teenager didn't say anything, because there was no need for words. He believed that those who had participated in the War of the Southern Continent would be able to recognize the powerful undead army that had made a deep impression in their hearts. There were many smart people in the world, and it would be fairly easy for them to connect the dots. After all, there was only one Nukkalavi in the world. Once they saw the Devil of the Sea rampage in the battlefield, they would associate it with William. Even if he denied it, no one would believe him. I guess I'll cross that bridge when I get there, William muttered. Till we meet again, Mwahahahaha. Mwahahahaha hovered above the floating island as he navigated Avalon through the skies of the central continent. He had been trapped inside the undying lands for thousands of years, and the geography of the world had changed with the passing of time. He planned to travel across the central continent to map its regions, and familiarize himself with it. William had given him the general layout of the world, and the various factions that resided in it. Of course, Mwahahahaha planned to verify the information with his own eyes in order to plan for the future. Among the various empires in the list that William had given him, there was one particular name that caught his attention. The Ares Empire, Mwahahahaha said softly. Fortunately, Astarte has left her descendants behind. They will be of great help in what is to come. Avalon flew steadily in the sky above the clouds. Its first destination was the Amazon Empire. Mwahahahaha wanted to know if the blood of the warrior goddess was just as powerful as it was in the past. He was going to pay a visit to the descendants of his acquaintances who had fought with him during the darkest era of the world. Time was of the essence, and the Dracolich had no intention of wasting it. 2 weeks passed, and the flying carriage of Emperor Leonidas finally reached the border of the Creter Empire. A one-way teleportation gate had already been established, so it didn't take long before the Emperor, along with his entourage, arrived at the capital city of the Creter Empire, Asmar. Sidney, have you already told William that the two of you will be married 2 weeks from now? Emperor Leonidas asked. Princess Sidney nodded her head. He already knows, Your Majesty. He will be there on the promised date. Good. The arrangements have already been made. The two of you only need to appear and everything will fall into place. Thank you, Your Majesty. Emperor Leonidas nodded his head and went back to the castle to rest. Everyone did the same and returned to their temporary residences in the capital city. Kenneth, Lilith, and Pearl were Princess Sidney's guests, so they were given VIP treatment. Empress Andraste still needed to do things in the Ares Empire, so she tasked Lilith to be her representative at Princess Sidney's wedding. Lilith had no complaints because she wanted to know more about William. The half-elf intrigued her. No one knew what happened during his battle with Meredith. Everyone had their own speculations, but none were able to confirm it. Everyone agreed that William had infiltrated Meredith's body and attacked it from inside. That was the only explanation that they could think of. Even William's lovers believed that this was the case. 2 weeks later, the wedding was held as planned. Princess Sidney wore a beautiful wedding dress that made her look divine. The hearts of all young men were broken when they saw the lady of their dreams. They had seen many beautiful women in the past, but none were as beautiful as the princess who was about to marry the handsome half-elf whose popularity was at its peak. If I could marry her, I would die without regrets. To be able to spend the night with such a beauty is every man's dream. I'm so envious. That William boy is so lucky. He will be able to have his way with the princess. If only she had met me first. Hello? Have you looked in the mirror? Why would the princess marry someone who looks like a sardine? It's about time that you faced reality. All the guys could only sigh as they thought about the lucky half-elf, who would be marrying the granddaughter of Emperor Leonidas. The heirs of the high-ranking nobles were disappointed as well. They had all tried to ask for the princess' hand in marriage, but she firmly rejected their advances. Now, they could only look at her from afar, and curse the half-elf who was lucky enough to be able to take her maidenhood on their wedding night. What they didn't know was that the pure maiden in their minds had lost her purity long ago. Of course, no one knew this except for William, Ian, and Chiffon. Even Emperor Leonidas was not aware that her granddaughter had already been stamped by William's seal of approval. William was wearing a black suit that highlighted his red hair and light green eyes. The ladies of the realm giggled when they saw him. There were also 2 little familiars floating by his side who were wearing similar clothes. One wore white, the other black. Just like William, both of them were very handsome. If not for the fact that they were only as tall as an adult's hand, both of them would definitely be the target of the noble ladies who were looking for an eligible candidate to marry. Elliot threw flying kisses to the beautiful ladies that William passed as he walked towards the altar. Conan, on the other hand, had a serious expression on his face, as if he was the one that was about to get married. The moment the half-elf stood side by side with Princess Sidney, everyone thought that they were a match made in heaven. Both of them complimented each other and everyone was certain that their children would be just as good-looking as they were. The ceremony proceeded without any mishaps. Both of them exchanged rings and kissed in front of everyone. Somewhere in the venue, Prince Jason looked at the woman of his dreams with a calm expression on his face. In the past, he did everything he could so that he would be the one to marry Princess Sidney. However, after the worldwide announcement, he knew that his chance had flown away. This was why he had resorted to drinking. It was the only way he knew of that could help him forget about his heartbreak. Does it still hurt? Princess Vanessa asked as she placed her soft hand over her beloved's chest. Yes, Prince Jason replied. It hurts. Princess Vanessa nodded her head in understanding and hugged her prince tightly. She knew that time would heal everything. Don't worry. I will make you forget her soon enough. Prince Jason lowered his head. He then looked at the collar that was on Princess Vanessa's neck, and caressed her face gently. Let's go, Prince Jason said. I've seen enough. Okay, Princess Vanessa nodded and allowed herself to be led away by the one she had loved for many years. William glanced in their direction before wishing for their happiness in his heart. He had asked the system to look for Prince Jason in the crowd, because he thought that the latter would do something to mess up his wedding with Sydney. Fortunately, the prince simply watched from afar, and left with Princess Vanessa to find their own happiness in life. I pray that the next time we meet, we will be friends and not enemies, William prayed in his heart as he watched them disappear in the distance. The half-elf was not the only one who was looking in Prince Jason's and Princess Vanessa's direction. Emperor Leonidas and Prince Maximilian were doing the same. They gave the two of them their silent blessing and wished for their happiness. William and Princess Sydney left the venue while being showered by cheers and applause from everyone in the kingdom. Lilith stared at the two of them with an indifferent gaze. However, deep inside she was already making plans of her own. The Amazon princess was aware that William was keeping his distance from her, but she wasn't too bothered by it. Her divinity was greed after all. There was nothing in the world that she couldn't take, for that was the power of her divinity. If I can't have it, then I'll just steal it, Lilith mused. High above the heavens, inside the temple of the 10,000 gods, a certain greedy goddess chuckled. She was well aware of how stubborn her daughter was, but she believed that she had found her match in William. You can steal as much as you want, daughter of mine, Mammon said with a smile. However, that also goes both ways. Since you decided to steal, you should also be prepared to have something stolen from you. I pray that the boy, William, will teach you this lesson, Lilith. For not all treasures are silver and gold. Chapter 710 Aamon's Last Trial. After spending a few days with Princess Sydney, William once again returned to Aamon's temple to report his completion of the quest that was given to him. Tell me, did you wash your hands before you came here? Aamon asked with suspicion. The corner of William's lips twitched because this was the first sentence that came out of Aamon's lips as soon as he appeared in front of him. Of course I did, William replied. I'm a very hygienic person, you know. Aamon arched an eyebrow, but he didn't say anything else. Instead, he went straight to business and informed William about his next trial. Listen well, half-elf. Due to the manner of how you cleared the other trials, I decided to give you one last trial, Aamon said. If you clear this trial, I will honor my words and lift the curse on Est's, Ian's, and Isaac's bodies. At first, William thought that he just misheard Aamon's words. But, after asking for confirmation, Astrid's twin brother had indeed said that this would be his final trial, and it made William very happy. No matter what it is, I will definitely accomplish it without fail. William patted his chest with confidence. Come at me, bro. Aamon snorted. I sincerely hope that you will be able to pass this trial as well. I look forward to your performance. William quieted down and waited for Aamon to finish his explanation. He was very curious about what the final trial would be. Naturally, he expected that this trial would be more difficult than the two trials that he had finished not long ago. There is a young lady who is staying in Hestia Academy that goes by the name Shannon, Aamon said. What I want you to do is help her with her problem. William nodded his head. What is her problem? Well, you can go and ask her yourself. After you finish this last trial, you don't have to report to me. I will honor my word, and carry my end of our agreement. Thank you, Your Excellency. Aamon waved his hand in a casual manner. No need to thank me. Like I said, this is our agreement. You may now go. William gave Aamon a brief bow before leaving the temple. The Grand Marquis of Hell watched the half-elves retreating back with a mischievous smile on his lips. "Good luck, William," Aamon mused. "You will need all the luck in the world in order to clear this quest." After his short chat with William, Aamon went to the Temple of the Gods to see his sister. Astrid had taken a hands-off policy in regards to the red-headed teenager's trials, so Aamon thought it would be a good idea to inform her about William's last quest. "You really asked him that?" Astrid inquired as she looked at her twin in disbelief. "You tasked him to meet Shannon and help her solve her problems." "Yes," Aamon answered. "I was supposed to give him a few more trials, but I'm afraid that he will be able to breeze through them in no time at all. Since that is the case, I should just let him face the last boss. Who knows? Maybe he will surprise me." Astrid stared long and hard at Aamon. "Are you sure about this? Although I think that his chances for succeeding are slim, that boy is indeed capable. I thought he would not be able to clear the 51st floor of Babylon, but to our surprise, he really managed to do it. Are you sure you thought this through? Are you prepared for the possible result of this endeavor?" Aamon chuckled. "If he passes, then great. I will even be thankful to him if he manages to solve Shannon's problem." Astrid sighed as she drank her tea. Her twin had taken a gamble, and he was betting his chips on William's success. "I guess this is his way of showing that he cares for her," Astrid thought. "I just hope that my brother will not regret the decision he made today." After leaving the temple, William hurriedly went to find Chloe. She was Celeste's familiar, and knew a lot about Hestia Academy. The half-elf was hoping that he would be able to gain some information regarding the girl named Shannon, who seemed to be studying inside Hestia Academy. "How do you know about Shannon?" Chloe frowned. Not many knew about Shannon's existence. For William to know about this secret meant that he had been told the news by someone else. Chloe crossed her arms on her chest and eyed William with a critical gaze. She didn't understand how a closely guarded secret was known to someone who was not even enrolled at the academy. "A god told me," William replied with a smile. "Then listen, and listen well," Chloe said after thinking things through. She decided to tell William all the information she knew about Shannon, to prevent William from investigating on his own. If he was caught by one of the guards that were tasked to protect the white-haired girl from the academy, he might be subjected to a severe punishment that might also find its way to her, because she was William's sixth master. "Shannon is a year older than you, and she has a very peculiar ability," Chloe whispered. "Almost everyone who has laid their eyes on her has committed suicide. So, if you don't want to die, don't even try to find Shannon in the academy. This is for your own good, do you understand?" William could only nod his head because Chloe was starting to get agitated. This was the first time that he had seen her act this way. Although he was confident in his strength, he wasn't omnipotent. The way Chloe was acting made him realize that there was more to Shannon than met the eye. For now, he just nodded his head in order to calm the little familiar, who was looking back at him with an anxious expression written on her face.